proceed. So from Spain, Oviedo University, Dr. Andrés ARIAS is going to deliver a presentation now.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, first of all, I would like to thank the organizing committee for the invitation to this event. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to thank for this opportunity to share some knowledge about the Iberian medicinal leeches. So I will pass to share my screen with you. Okay. Well. Well, during the last decade, it has begun to unravel the Western Palearctic distribution of medicinal leeches in practically all of Europe, except for its more westernmost peninsula, that is Iberia or Iberian Peninsula. And this peninsula is bordered by the Mediterranean Sea from the south and the eastern part, and also by the Atlantic Ocean, the northern and the eastern part. Also, the Iberian Peninsula is close to the European subcontinent by the Pyrenees Mountains, and its southernmost tip is very close to Africa. These geographic features makes them that harbors different types of climates, outstanding the Mediterranean one in the southern part and central part of Iberia, and the Atlantic climates or the oceanic climates in the northern and the eastern part of Iberia. Also, it has another two climates, the subalpine and the subarctic climates in the Pyrenees Mountains and the Cantabrian Mountains. Previous works about leeches, mainly the work by Teskey and his co-authors in 2010, suggested that the climate conditions and the different climate conditions may favor different species of leeches, and they suggest that the Iberian Peninsula may harbor the species Hirudo verbana. We have a very good bibliographic record of different species of leeches reported, of medicinal leeches reported from Iberia. However, this record has been questioned by Teskey and other authors, and really, until now, we don't know clearly which species we have there. Two species have been mainly reported from the area, Hirudo medicinalis and Hirudo troctina, but those records are not has not been confirmed. Well, since 2014 and 2015, we conducted several sampling from different localities, mainly from northwestern Spain and also from the northern, and found different populations of Hirudo species that initially we sorted all of them based upon the morphology, and we identified two morphotypes. One morphotype that looks like the typical Hirudo verbana, mainly in its dorsal color pattern, and another one that looks strictly different and has a distinct color pattern on its dorsum, and we call as bilineated. Before and later I will explain more about this. Also, we analyzed the traditional morphology and anatomy features and two mitochondrial markers, the CO1 and the 12S rRNA. And furthermore, we examined the historical collections preserved in the Natural History Museum of Madrid and also in the historical collection of the University of Oviedo. Here we have the phylogenetic tree with all the samples we collected from northern Spain mainly. We find that all samples cluster together in a new Iberian phylogroup within the Hirudo verbana, and the Iberian phylogroup is sister to the Eastern phylogroup and the Western phylogroup that previously Serge has told about them. The Iberian phylogroup can be divided within two subgroups. One that groups the traditional or the typical color pattern assigned to Hirudo verbana and has its own haplotypes that we call haplotype 2. And we have another haplotype 1, that is correspond with this new morphotype that is characterized by the presence of two paired dorsal lines that run along the dorsal surface of the leech. We have also the Western phylogroups with two haplotypes, and the Eastern phylogroup with 14 haplotypes. Well, I would like to tell you about these morphotypes. This morphotype that has a congruent support by the molecular and also by morphological data, mainly the color pattern. We have only two populations of these morphotypes, and as you can see, it has two parallel lines that run over the dorsal surface of the leech, and the background color is mainly brownish. We also see some specimens that has a greenish color, but mainly it's brownish, and the dorsal lines or stripes are mainly reddish to orange, and may have or not small black dots on these stripes. The ventral pattern resembles pretty well the ventral pattern of Hirudo verbana, the typical Hirudo verbana. And also it has a ventrolateral black lines. About the populations, one was found in the Basque country in a pond with an altitude of 800 meters, and the other came from the Leon Mountains, from the Cueza ponds, and also an altitude over 800 meters. Then we have a picture of a live specimen in nature, and this is a preserved one that preserves pretty well the typical color pattern of this morphotype. This is a medium-sized species, over 8 centimeters. It's not very large, and we can see two pictures of the two ponds. We found the two populations. The above one is the Cueza pond in the Basque country, and below we have the pond from Castilla y León, from the León Mountains. Both are communities dominated by this plant, by Pomatogeton, that is a very branched plant that creates a three-dimensional habitat that also harbor a great diversity of amphibians, mainly the Iberian rain frogs, on which we observed some leeches feeding on them. From the Galician population, mainly from lakes and large ponds, we found several populations with the typical color pattern of Hirudo verbana, as we can see on these two pictures. And we have two of the lakes where we found these morphotypes that cluster together with the bilineated one. Also, we found from the historical collections several specimens of Hirudo troctina from the southern and the central part of Iberia, and also from the northern part of Iberia. Mainly this species was found from a river and from streams, and our results show that the two Iberian species, Hirudo verbana with the two morphotypes and Hirudo troctina, present different habitat preference. Hirudo verbana is found mainly in standing waters or very low flowing waters, and Hirudo troctina was found mainly in rivers and streams, so in moving waters. We didn't find current populations from the service from 2014 and 2015, and our last record dates back the 90s from northern Spain. Well, finally, I will share with you some conclusion of this study. One of them that is very well spread among the European medicinal leeches is that the Iberian medicinal leeches have been insufficiently and systematically studied. Our records of Hirudo verbana constitute its first confirmed record in this peninsula and its westernmost known distribution to date in Europe. The provided distribution pattern of Hirudo verbana contributes to a better understanding of the complexity of Iberian Peninsula as a glacial refugium, with a great amount of endemic species, including parasite species, and harbors population with high degree of genetic structure that began to settle throughout the Pleistocene. Also, we know that Hirudo populations from Iberian Peninsula, both Hirudo verbana and Hirudo troctina, are declining, and the red indicates as a direct and indirect result of human activity, and therefore there is an urgent need to assess their conservation and status and to initiate managing several tools for managing and conservation measures to reverse the decline and try to recovering the species. Now, the morphotype with 2 lines, the delineated one, is in process of being described, and we are decided to describe it as a new subspecies because we have 2 important points: the of congruence, the morphology, and also the typical the genetics and the morphology. And we think that it's important to conserve this population and this variant of the species. Finally, I would like to thank our team because without them this study has not been possible. And thank you very much for your attention. So you have some questions.
Sayın Andre, biz de sizlere bu değerli sunumunlardan dolayı
Thank you very much, Andre, for the very nice presentation. Sergey Utevsky and Mr. Andres, well, we understand from your both presentations that especially in the southern geography of Europe, Sicily, and southwestern geography, Iberia, there are important regions when it comes to leech, a diversity of leech. I'm sure we're going to hear of some good news and surprises from that region as to the finding of new species. Why not? Thank you very much. If we have any questions for the speakers, for Mr. Andre and Mr. Arias, we would be collecting the questions now. Mr. Mustafa, can I ask a question, sir? Please go ahead. First of all, I'd like to thank the presenters for their very nice presentations. I have a question, if I may, especially when it comes to morphology and genetics in verbana. In both morphology and genetics, can we say that there is a harmony between them two? So morphology, do you think morphology supports genetics and genetics supports morphology? Do you have any knowledge about it, you think? Thank you.
Well, we think that the support by the genetics is more or less congruent with the 2 phylogenetic groups, the Eastern and the Western, and also the New Sicilian one that Serge speak before. And if I understand the question, you mean that why we have decided to call them as a subspecies or a species? We mean this range, or I don't understand the question adequately.
Sorum şöyle.
My question is, in certain regions we can see the differences of colors, right? Differences of colors on the leech, on the species of leech, different colors.
Yeah.
So there is this morphological changes between these species, but is there any genetical variation as well? Have you also observed genetical variations? I just wanted to learn whether there are genetical variations. Is the genetical distance between them two is enough or not?
Well, about the genetical distance, yes, they are very close, both the Iberian morphotypes, and thus we think that mainly the morphological difference responds to some ecological constraints more than and perhaps an evolutionary different origins. So maybe here the ecology, the different habitats may favor one of the coloration, mainly the delineated one for the low flowing ecosystem or standing waters, and also it has the venter part without dark marks, and some of the other, the typical verbana from the Great Lakes have some black dots on the ventral side. So we think that the ecological constraints in this case may favor the color pattern, and maybe also there is a barrier between both habitats and mainly the altitude, because the ponds where Hirudo verbana bilineata was found are higher than the population of the typical Hirudo verbana, so maybe they don't have an interbreeding area. So probably they favor the speciation in recent years. But by now, we have that the most important difference may do for the ecology and for the habitats.
Biz de teşekkür ederiz.
Thank you indeed.
Fahrettin Hocam, cevap tamamdır herhalde.
Evet aldım. Demek ki bir an önce...
Thank you very much for the answers. Well, the thing is, there is need for further research and studies in this area, as you said in your concluding remarks, sir. So thank you very much for your kind presentation once again. May I say something?
Thank you.
Yes, please. Go ahead. From Eğirdir and Beyazıt University, we have Dr. Senayan, who wants to take the floor. First of all, thank you very much for this very nice work. And I'd like to thank you for this work, all of you. Dr. Mustafa Ceylan, thank you for your efforts, and everybody for organizing this event and participating in this event. And let me say how delighted I am to take part in this important event. I have questions for Mr. Victor and for Sergey, if possible. Dr. Victor, first of all, hello, Victor. Dr. Victor, hello.
Hello.
About your presentation, I got intrigued, actually, I got impressed. And I have a question, if I may. Environmental pollution, drought, and uncontrolled hunting, collection leads to endangerment on the site of the leech. So what kind of measures can be taken in Europe for the future in order to save them from being endangered and from being depleted? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. So one of the major will be the including of both species into red data books. And we hope that this year it will appear. The first red data book of invertebrates, which will include both species. Another good legislative measure is that Hirudo verbana has been included in European directive, in Habitat Directive. So he has protection status. And there are some problems with local people because they don't want to be established a Natura 2000 area because of founding one leech. So there are some kind of problems because conservation measure, they are sometimes in opposite direction with the development of in the country, you know. So the inclusion in the lists with protected species, I think it will be the first step for preserving the species and increasing the awareness of for the need of their protection. And of course, I think that the aquaculture facilities will help to protect wild population in Romania. And to my knowledge, there are some facilities which are reproducing. Also, another question, it's not be a problem because many medical centers actually, they don't buy medical leases produced locally, they import them. And to my knowledge, for instance, in my city, there is a medical center, they import from Ukraine leeches, they buy from abroad. Maybe there are the taxes are lesser, but anyway, the price for a leech in Romania is, to my knowledge, is very low. So this will be the increasing the aquaculture of leeches will help the wild populations to be protected.
Hocam ben teşekkür ederim.
Thank you, sir. Thank you indeed. Dr. Victor, it was a pleasure. Dr. Sergei Utevska, I have a question, if I may. Mustafa, sir, can I ask a question to Mr. Sergei? Please be quick, sir. Dr. Sergei, hello, can you hear me? I have a question for you, sir, if I may. We are excited by your work in Iberian Peninsula in Sicily. You mentioned molecular differences and changes. Hirudo verbana in Turkey. Do you think there is also such a breed difference in Turkey in the Hirudo species in Turkey? Does sir, can't you hear the?
So,
Sir, we are already translating, sir. Sir, we are translating. Sir, we are translating. Can't you hear the interpreter, sir? What's the problem? Hello? Hello, what's the problem, sir? Sir?
Sayın Sergey,
Mr. Sergey, did you select the interpretation channel, sir? Sir, there is interpretation services going on at the moment. You have to select the English channel. Yes, you have to go for the channel. Okay, please go ahead. Thank you. Mr. Sergey, hello. Dr. Sergey, can you hear me? First of all, we are following closely with what you have to do. We are excited by your research, by your work. In South European subgroup, there is Iberian and Sicily, and you talked about molecular differences in those regions. Do you think in Turkey, Hirudo verbana, do you think there will be a breed differences in Hirudo verbana in Turkey with morphological changes, morphological differences or not? What do you think? What could be the situation in Turkey? Any idea, sir?
So, так, они меня слышат, да? So, I think Turkish Hirudo verbana leeches. Так, подождите, я не хочу слышать это. Hirudo verbana leeches in Turkey are different in their genetical structure. They are a different clade or subcenter in the eastern phylogroup. So there is an eastern phylogroup, and Turkish leeches are a separate subcenter or clade in this phylogroup. So Turkish leeches are different from other Hirudo verbana leeches, and also, as I understand, as I know, they're also very variable in their morphology, especially in their coloration. So coloration is very variable in Turkish leeches, and genetically they're also very diverse with many haplotypes of mitochondrial DNA. CO1 gene and 12S genes are very variable in Turkish leeches. So Turkish leeches are, I would say, they their highest in their variability, both genetically and morphologically.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sergey.
Thank you very much.
Evet,
Thank you very much, Dr. Sergey. Okay, that was it.
kısmen değindiğiniz iklim değişikliğiyle ilgili.
Well, Mr. Hussein, you touched upon climate change, and Mr. Victor also underlined something similar. Well, do you think we can make a concrete recommendation to come out of this workshop accordingly? Let me put it that way. As far as I understand, as far as I know, in Azerbaijan or other countries bordering Caspian Sea,
Maksim balığı üreten çiftliklerin belirli oranlarda Hazar Denizi'ne
in those countries,
bırakma sorumlulukları mevcut.
those facilities breeding surgeon fish, they have to leave certain amount of fish to the Caspian Sea, as far as I know.
Tıbbi sürü çiftliklerinin de
So,
popülasyonu destekleme noktasında
so when it comes to Leech facilities in Turkey, Leech businesses in Turkey, I think they have to be incentives. The Turkish businesses should also be incentivized to leave certain portion of their species into the nature, to introduce them into the nature. I think this is important. Population should be supported somehow. Businesses should be incentivized to leave some of their products in the nature, introduce them into the nature, and support the populations of the leech. Mr. Andre, I have a question, if I may. I think your study, your research has not been published in a journal. Is that true, sir? Your study, has it been published in any scientific journal yet?
yayınlama düşünceniz var mıdır?
Are you planning to publish your work in a scientific journal very soon?
Well, thank you for the question. Yes, we are have submitted the paper to BMC Zoology, and it's now in the revision part. So hope that soon we can have the published version, and we will share with all of you, and hope that it will be soon.
Biz de sabırsızlıkla
We're excited, we're thrilled, and we want to see your publication actually. Your publication would be so much exciting for the researchers in this area. We also follow up the developments with your work. We will. So thank you. Distinguished participants,